track.
Facilitating that global warming. How are you ladies today? We got one
Like in the
thumbs
black
up.
and white.
Yeah. See, Leslie's stuck in Heathrow Airport.
Oh my
She's
goodness.
trying to make her way to Greece. Missed a connection. Luggage is lost. Just not a happy camper. So I'm here filling in, and we're going to have a peaceful stream. Unless you guys really want to get fiery, which would be fun.
To be honest, I'm in a very pissy mood.
Okay.
I'm in a pissy mood too.
Oh, what? We got two pissies and Deborah?
I'm Switzerland. I don't know. Neutral. I'm in
really?
Switzerland.
Okay. So two pissies, a Switzerland, and I'll be facetious then.
Okay. Let's see where that takes.
Good news for Leslie. She just got her luggage fixed. So
Yay.
Oh,
Good.
excellent.
good. Yeah, she was carrying tons of stuff. So what's been going on over the weekend lately in the taco sphere, in the nebulous pneumos sphere of the internet, the meaning-making machine?
Well,
You get. Go ahead.
I spend way too much time online, and I need to stop doing that because I spent all day reading crazy tweets about St. Michael, and I just can't even believe we live in a world where people are falling out over religion. Like I mean, it's not really even religion per se, although that definitely happens. Like, people argue various types of theology and whatnot, and that's all interesting and cool and whatever. But it's, how many days to this election, and why are we talking about this? Please tell me, why are we talking about this right now?
Do you want to explain to people what the whole St. Michael thing is? I've seen little things about it, but I haven't had time myself to read about it.
I don't have an explanation. This is not from the horse's mouth. So, I mean, St. Michael is a saint, one of the archangels who defeated or who battled Satan. And, he's a saint. He's a saint in the Catholic religion. And Donald Trump yesterday, because it was the feast of St. Michael, tweeted out a pretty, if you're a very secular person, or if you're maybe another religion, I could see why the tweet would be, or the whatever it was on whatever platform it was, the post could be alarming or bombastic. It was very religious, very much like kind of fire and brimstone-y Catholic version about defeating enemies and defeating Satan and whatever. But it is Trump, so he's not going to go to Trump for nuance.
Right.
Anyway, wouldn't have even seen that because I'm not on the social platform that he posted it on until James Lindsay wrote a really long screed about it, basically saying it was some sort of theosophist, globalist cabal that had taken control of Trump, and I'm not even really formatting his tweet. I'm not really the tweet was very involved and complicated, and the only thing I could think of when I read it was, even if this is true, and I don't know, maybe there is a secretive plot to control the mind of Trump through some kind of obscure cult religion. I mean, it could be true. I don't know. I am not there. I don't know. But my point is, St. Michael is a very well-known saint in the Catholic canon, and a lot of little old ladies pray to him, and a lot of little old men, and just because to issue this sort of blanket condemnation is sort of the opposite of any kind of bridge building, or bringing people along with you in a moment of political crisis. It's deeply alienating because there's a lot of little old ladies who like St. Michael and don't want to be called cultists. People outside this little bubble, which I am definitely in, and I put myself in, and I could take this criticism myself, but people inside this bubble really seem to lose touch with how little they matter on the outside world, and how little the things they do and say resonate with people who are just going about their lives. Completely, someone reading that who had never seen any of these discussions before would just think, what are you talking about? This has no bearing on reality whatsoever.
It does, though. That's the thing. I mean, there's that. You guys remember when we were all Democrats, and
Yes.
some kid would shoot another kid? Well, a white kid would shoot another kid, and so it made the news. And then Republicans would say thoughts and prayers for the family, and then the Democrats would say thoughts and prayers. But now all we do is thoughts and prayers. Like all this virtue signaling online, it's nothing but thoughts and prayers. We're trying to manifest our intentionality through this media, and it's ultimately a MMORPG, which is a gamer term for massively multiplayer online role-playing game. It's a video game made out of sentences, and we create our avatars, and some of us are more avatar-y and some of us are more realistic, but we're all facilitating this game, supporting this game, and it's indistinguishable from thoughts and prayers. So when Trump projects this loaded prayer, it has more than one meaning. It fractures as soon as it hits the ground. Like if you go back to the most real moment in American politics in my lifetime, him getting shot in the air, losing a shoe, forcing his security to let him stand up, and then punching through that wall, going fight, fight, fight. Pure instinct. Pure instinct. You can, maybe people think it's theater. For me, that oozes instinct. That was authenticity. But so that broke through the screen within 20 minutes, 50 minutes, we're all responding to it, and it gets buried under loads and loads of interpretation. And the more important you are in this realm, the more interpretive slide, there's probably a cooler term, shearing, is going to apply to anything you do. So if Trump is being sincere or not, it doesn't matter because people are going to interpret that. James Lindsay, one of the most brilliant interpreters at work right now in this space, so-called, he's got a pattern recognition machine, and right now his pattern recognition machine is really plugged into this thing called theosophy. So he's going to interpret that in one way. Other people are going to interpret it in another way. And he's trying to play multiple interpretations, saying, the left is going to take this as Christian nationalism, as a violent threat. The right, or at least the Christian right, is saying, James, why are you policing us every single time our side gets a little bit of religious leverage? You go after us. And you say, don't be Christian. Be Christian, but not Christian. And so it's interesting how James, he interprets things, and now everybody's interpreting him, and he got a bunch of fractures going on around him. Jonathan Peugeot, Chris Rufo, all of the unapproved right. I really like that term, Jenny. They're all taking different stances against him, and James is being very pugilistic and just shooting down anybody who doesn't see things his way, which I think is an error of his interpretive faculty, prizing his own interpretation and not having the humility or the ability at this point in time to just recognize that other people are going to interpret things in different ways. And that's okay, because it's about coalition building. Sense making is coalition building. It's all religion. We all agree on an interpretation. And so that process of arguing and community that's formed around interpretation is more real than the interpretation, is more real than any other kind of derivative meaning. Thoughts? Deborah?
Sorry, there's a lot going on there. I'm just going back to watching James do these things around the mystical stuff, and I have a lot of disagreements with him on that and how he puts that together. So anyway, I don't even know how to respond to that. There was a lot in there. I think what you're sort of saying is, and it makes me think of the book, I don't think it's going to match entirely, but I'll plug it even though I haven't read it yet, is Musa Al-Gharbi has a book coming out in the next few days called We Have Never Been Woke. And he talks about the symbolic capitalists. And I think this is this sort of problem of we've moved into this level of the currency is all of this symbolic exchange and not the reality of anything. And then where does this lead us in terms of even being able to coordinate? You think about it as a society, like just being able to coordinate at all to do anything as a group, and how difficult it's getting when everyone's living in their own algorithmically designed reality. And it just keeps fracturing out. So I yeah, I don't know what to say. I'd love to have some more meta thinkers maybe out there who can kind of like what you just kind of did, Benjamin, is sort of point out that we're assembling things. People are assembling things differently in meaning making. And then there's just all of this, whether it's distrust or scattering. I don't know how it's solved, but if at least people could even get with the program of like, oh, maybe I'm not entirely right. Or maybe this person's assembling some things over here on this level and someone else, their assemblage point is like a different one. And then you can make a narrative and you can make a different narrative. And just, I don't know, not fall for, oh my God, those horrible other people. At least that.
It's funny. One more point. Something else went, did the rounds yesterday or the day before that. John Kerry was at the World Economic Forum. John Kerry is the presidential candidate that ran against George Bush in 2003, 2004. And he said that the problem with democracy, well, there's actually two clips that kind of went around and they kind of spoke with each other. John Kerry's taking the position that democracy can't really function because of all this disinformation and the First Amendment is getting in our way. We can't actually adapt and change with the urgency that we need to do when everybody is selecting their own sources of information. We need to figure that out. Which is like, okay, who are you to do that? Isn't that why we had the First Amendment? And then there was another kind of WEF kind of sideline, like the World Government Association or like another WEFy kind of talk where the guy said, you know, us leaders are always talking about disinformation and we want to control that disinformation. We want to correct that. We don't want our citizens looking at lies and breeding lies, but the citizens are watching us fail miserably. And so, of course, they're not going to trust us anymore. If we can fix our own systems, if we can fix our own systems, then they wouldn't need to look for alternative interpretations of that. But it's much easier for us to just try to put a lid on it rather than actually fix the systemic problems that they are actually complaining about.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't that indicate to you that the thing we need above all things is message discipline to counteract this incredibly powerful threat? I don't see, because that's a really good thing to bring up, Benjamin. Like this is what's right in front of us. Okay. John Kerry was at the, whatever that was over the weekend, within the last 7 days, whatever it was. We have an election coming up in 30 days, whatever. Okay. So what are we talking about theosophists for? Why are we doing that? That is 100% guilt by association. It is mind reading. It's projection. It's all of these things. It's hysteria. It's setting your hair on fire. Where is the message discipline to return to the core of the issue, which is how to wrest from these corrupt and incompetent and extremely weird and dangerous elites the power that they have usurped and are trying to cement within their grasp and remove from us forever. How are we doing that? How can we possibly do that? So it is hard to complain about takes when you're also giving takes. I get that.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's the thing. So the shining more light on it actually perpetuates it. It perpetuates the noise. Like if people, like we can go back to this stupid thing that I've been involved in for a while, that Daryl Cooper, Tucker Carlson interview. If people hadn't have reacted to him, he wouldn't have shot to the top of the charts.
Right.
So he's playing into that.
Well, yes. I mean, the platform with Tucker, though, was a big megaphone. So, yes, I think it added, of course, all of that but he already, just because it was Tucker, was going to get disseminated. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking about message discipline, I think the correct tact is to try to divert any given interpreter or meaning maker or node of thought in the tacosphere. Not try to suppress them or go against them, but incorporate their message and spin it the way that you want to do. So James Lindsay's probably intuitively onto something pretty powerful, and it's symbolical. It's this meaning, this reassertion of this kind of mythic meaning that is always, it kind of surrounds Trump in this way right now. He's kind of a lightning rod for a lot of the meaning making, and he's kind of a change maker. I don't think intentionally at all. And James, I think, is pointing that out, that when Trump starts to play around with this symbolism, it's very powerful, and we don't know how it works. James is a mathematician, so he looks at symbols in a very particular way. He's trained like that. Jonathan Peugeot, which would be interesting to have them talk again, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, it's true.
It has a different framework, and I can't understand either of their interpretive faculties other than that they're really good at making a cohesive narrative out of these really esoteric or like disparate factoids, right? But I can learn, or I can adopt, or I can lean into what they're doing and try to see, okay, why is this catching his imagination, and how is it possibly another vehicle for what?
Yeah.
What would be the point of the vehicle? I think you said it's somehow having to do with coalition building and maintaining.
Yeah, but there's a third leg to that stool, I think, Benjamin, which is the just the human element to this, which is, that's a really good contrast between Peugeot and Lindsay and the mathematician versus the artist or whatever, the storyteller maybe versus the mathematician, in terms of interpreting this very ancient symbol, like primordial, really. I mean, it's like the most basic story, good versus evil, right? But there's the third element is how regular people, how normal people, how the hobbits, the folk, the deplorables, I keep going again, the grannies, okay, what those symbols mean to them. And I feel like there's so much ego and hubris in James Lindsay, for him in this particular thing, and with other people in other disputes, that is so dismissive and contemptuous of the reality. So it doesn't even seem to be aware of the reality that if should a granny happen upon his tweet, which admittedly is very unlikely. So, I shouldn't go on their behalf, but I personally feel like you're forgetting about the human element of this and how important these figures have been to old ladies for 2,000 years. Okay.
I want to jump in here because it does seem, and that's going to attention on the writer, whatever you want to call it, because there are some bodies that are wanting to bring the faith element back in and at least accommodate it somehow. I mean, even Vivek talks about it. And frankly, I don't know if you saw Russell Brand led Jordan Peterson in the Lord's Prayer at the Rescue of the Republic, in the middle. And I was in the mix of cringe-ish and whoa, what's going on? And so I don't know that anybody can tamp down some sort of, whether it's healthy or, there's probably a healthy aspect to including and having some sort of spiritual thing, but it's some people are co-opting it, to just signal something. In some ways it's cringe. People get worried about the Christian nationalism. So I don't know, but I don't know if that lid can be put down on them in terms of this message. I don't know. I just saw it surging up in that event, and so I was like, okay, it's kind of here. They're like, we're going to be open about faith.
Yeah, I would love to know what all of you guys think. Did that make you feel uncomfortable or kind of happy, excited? How did that make you feel?
Jen?
Well, I'm a bag of mixed vegetables about it. And the little video of it that I saw, I didn't see what happened immediately beforehand. So I don't know what the sort of vibe and context was, and if for the people that were there, it felt very much in the flow and you just had to be there. Maybe it felt very organic based on something they'd just been discussing. I don't know. To me, I just see that all of a sudden, Russell Brand is doing the Lord's Prayer. But I did feel a little bit of a, but I think that might be because prior to that, I think I just seen Russell Brand baptizing somebody in a river, and Russell Brand is just wearing his little white undies.
That was kind of yes.
I don't want to be baptized by somebody in their underwear, a man in his tighty whities. So I do have a negative reaction to that. So I have mixed feelings about it, because on the one hand, I think part of the reason the West is in so much trouble is that we've sort of lost our shared mythology. And so bringing that back in some ways feels like a really sensible thing to do. And maybe a more meaningful way to live. But on the other hand, I also have a little bit of a teeny cringe factor. So
Is it cringe, or is it a concern about religion in the public sphere?
is it what?
Is it cringe, which it kind of is, or is it concern about religion in the public sphere? I don't know. I can't, I'm on the fence still, so.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know either. And I'm not against all religion in the public sphere either. I'm not. But I'm also not a person who would necessarily race out to embrace that, because prior to me feeling any kind of, well, it's sort of something that is more recognizable as a spiritual inclination. It used to really bother me when religion was all over the place when I was a kid. I felt kind of left out of society because of it, and sort of like people that had no business. Like, I didn't think my teachers should have anything to do with trying to impart religious ideas to me.
And here you are,
So
watching
here I am.
teachers force a new religion on all the kids.
That's right. That's right. Because nature abhors a vacuum, and the old religion is infinitely preferable to our new religion. So,
Yeah.
That would
in
be
that
my take.
respect, I'm not going to go and say there should be no religion in the public sphere.
But maybe it's more of an opt-in, right? Like, so say people went to that event and they didn't know suddenly someone's going to start praying in it, and they might be like, I didn't come for this. So someone said, we're holding a thing, we're going to be talking about our spiritual lives. And then someone's like, oh, I want to be there, I'm into that. I don't know if that's the matter of knowing what is going to just be put in there or not. I don't know.
What do you think, Ben?
I don't think Russell Brand is qualified to represent Jesus Christ.
Right.
There's a long community of saints and tradition that one take on it was that when Saul was on the road to Damascus, and Jesus like whacked him over the face because he was going around killing Christians, and then Paul kind of secluded himself and went into meditation, contemplation, and a deep looking into himself. And then years later, he became a minister. Russell Brand going from rock star to guru to baptizer, like that's all external. That's all show. And that doesn't facilitate, this is what I'm leaning towards more and more, because the people who get credence within the discourse end up becoming more and more pastor-like or demagogue-like, because they have a message, they get attention, and then they find that their job is to moralize and to direct people. And there is a gap in the connection between them and their audience that facilitates their rise to a movie star rather than a pastor. And the difference between those two things is that pastors have a connection with their tradition and the people in their tradition. And then they have a connection with their congregation, not their audience. And their speaking to their congregation is the smallest, least important part of their job. And for most traditions, in the Christian tradition, you don't even make up your own sermon. You just recite a homily. You participate with the tradition, and you just simply act as its mouthpiece. So Russell Brand co-opting the symbols of Christianity without performing the very necessary work of internalizing that and allowing it to change him from the inside out is going to get him off really quick, but it's going to burn out. It's a match head. So to what degree can he be useful to a Christian revival? I don't know. To what extent can a Christian revival be politically salient? I don't know. But once you put politics and spirituality together, I don't think that they belong together. I don't think that they belong together at all. But I do have to say that I do think that they belong together, but one precedes the other. And putting the cart before the horse is just a terrible mistake. Putting the spirituality as a vehicle for politics, or making politics a vehicle for spirituality, is not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not rooted in the right, core motivation.
Yeah, which is what? Who knows? I mean, Peterson's closer to it, but because he's got such a big platform, how can he connect to people? He went through a phenomenal death and rebirth. Just like talk about epic, mythical proportions. The world catches on fire with BLM and COVID, and Peterson, who was the light rod for a lot of awakening and a lot of people, he went into a coma in Russia, and then he eventually popped back on the scene a year later.
Yeah.
That is pretty mythical, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah, pretty wild. He went through some intense stuff with his own recovery from becoming physically addicted to benzos, and then his wife's, near death with her very serious cancer. So he really went through.
It's a
something
massive amount of
transformative.
purification, which is a spiritual process, and it happened in public. And that it doesn't violate something, but it's very powerful that the public and the private are wed together. And spirituality is a very personal thing. Politics is by definition public. So they can coexist, but they have to be ordered the correct way.
That's right. Actually, the private element and the sort of intimate element of belief and faith is part of the reason why I found the Lindsay's tweet so irritating and off base. But it's also it's extremely, it's something that I think people, even in arguments and fights and whatnot, need to be very cognizant of and tread gently around is being overly critical of someone else's personal belief, which, okay, maybe you can spin that in a woke way, I suppose, but it means to be like basic good manners, because that to me, I think, was the transgression in that, with like taking a big steaming dump on people who actually do genuinely pray to St. Michael because they genuinely believe that he is going to come down with his fiery sword and cut the head off the devil. Like, they genuinely believe that. And I am not going to judge them for that because I am not high and mighty enough to do so. I also have wacky ideas, or ideas that other people might find strange. And whatever gets you through the night, you know what I mean? Like, no judgment, really. No judgment. It's a personal matter. It's a private spiritual matter. But the thing that I find hard to wrestle with, even though I continuously, like, there's some inexorable force drawing me towards religion, is this idea that what you're just saying is like, where does the personal belief merge with the public law? That's a really difficult problem. And people setting their hair on fire on Twitter, they're not going to solve that. Like, that's not going to solve it. I don't even think it moves the discussion.
I think it's part of their own personal process.
Yeah.
And I think what's tricky. I would say, even with James, I mean, I think he would probably go, like you were saying, Benjamin, he'd probably be like, oh, it's okay to be Christian, but just make it tidy. Like there's a version of it that's actually probably kind of good, but don't get into like wacky things that are verging on New Age or something like that. And it's like, you can't necessarily corral these things to be expedient, even though you might want to.
Yeah.
But Ben just said something interesting, I think, about that's part of his process. Like, maybe what's happening with social media now is because part of how we come to understand our own thinking and challenge our own thoughts is through communication. And before social media, that would take place between family members and friends, and you refine your thoughts by sharing your thoughts and have somebody maybe challenge them or affirm them in a way that makes sense for you and is useful to your own thinking process. But so now we're actually engaging in our own thinking process and emotional process in public, on Twitter, on Instagram. And so the thinking process by definition is messy and is flawed. And we might say some things that later on we would revise, but it's there now, and it's being, like heavily judged, and maybe people are now saying, well, oh, you said this thing, and they're going to remember that 10 years later, and that was part of somebody's process. That's what I find both interesting about Twitter, but also really kind of terrifying because we don't have that grace to have our process and have it, be flawed and human.
Could that give me a moment to give a plug for Solid Ground?
Oh, here we go. If you're looking personal development, join our cult.
Well, no, because I said if you feel like you don't want to test your ideas out on Twitter, but you might want to test them out with a small group of people who will actually give you space to do so without broadcasting it, you can join Solid Ground. I'm going to read our little blurb. Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice or authoritarian measures such as COVID mandates in their workplace, university, children's school, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here, without everybody else seeing it in the universe. You can join one of our groups for $5 a month. To find out how to join our community, please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And please note that Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such. Thank you.
What about financial advice?
Definitely not that.
Oh, okay.
Crypto. Invest in crypto.
Buy gold.
Yeah, buy gold, right?
I had can I bring up something for you guys to help me with or to process with me? My parents came to town. They were on a cruise because they're retired now, and my dad's into these cruise things. And Mom got some GI infection, like 140 people on the boat did, some bad chicken or something. So she decided to skip the rest of the thing. But I got to spend some time with my mom, and we started talking about politics, and she has a really, really strong dislike of Trump, specifically how he verbalizes his rhetoric around immigrants. She finds to be very dehumanizing and dangerous, and she has positive regard for Harris, and I couldn't pinpoint where. And I'm kind of more on the Trump side of things. Well, I'm anti-Harris, really, because I'm anti what is happening over there. And a couple of things kind of shook out. Like there was a little bluster, like kind of talking past each other, but I kind of started to understand her a little bit more. I think that her and my dad have gone through, they're boomers. They've lived a rather long, very successful life, like not super successful, but they're both administrators. They both ended up in administration. Mom in hospital administration and dad as a pastor, which is more and more becoming synonymous with an administrator. That's how you train. When you go to seminary, you don't go to a spiritual retreat. You learn psychology and business management and all these other things, and theology too. But it's about the technocratic managerialization of Christianity. And so from their point of view, I think that Harris kind of just fits into the administrative state and the administrative way of functioning and dealing with the world, where she doesn't really need to have any content in herself so much as she takes the role of the administrator. And I was going to share this with you guys, but I don't have time. There is this great guy. He's kind of, I don't know if you'd like him. He's kind of anti-woman in a cheeky way. His name's Kryptos. He's a pastor, an ex-pastor, minister up in Canada. And he's been going through a writer named Walter Ong, who has one of my favorite books called Orality and Literacy. And it's just about the change in the way that we think and deal with each other, how it changed from the oral culture to the written culture, and how the administrative state is really based on a way of dealing with the world that is organized like writing. And he made this really interesting argument about the feminization of society having to do with the loss of woman's traditional work in the home because of industrialization. There was no more need for spending hours and hours washing clothes, beating rugs, raising children was much more easily managed. And so women's needed to find what their natural role was. And rather than administrating the private realm, they became more and more involved in administrating the public realm, in bureaucracies and making sure that things work well together, and merchandise and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if there's a way, I don't have a question yet, but I think Trump really pushes through that because he's so pugilistic and he's anti-feminine in his style. He's not graceful. He's not conciliatory. He's pugilistic. He's an asshole. And there's a good place for that kind of guy in two different domains. And so as I was talking to my mom, and I'm about to finish, sorry for rambling, we kind of got away from the politics and we started to focus on her actual concerns. Her two concerns are a world war where her grandchildren are going to be shipped off to die, and medical ethics, specifically around the mutilation of children and for the sake of this gender nonsense. And I was thinking, I'm just wondering about trying to square the circle and making a political argument about these issues. I really don't have a question. I just threw up a whole bunch of stuff.
So wait,
you guys,
so your mom was concerned about those two issues, which I would think a lot of people think Harris would be on the other side of. I'm trying to put this together.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because when we got to there, I'm like, okay, well, Harris is full bore into both this and there's the geopolitical argument, which it's a toss-up whether Trump's going to have any power to change the military-industrial complex. If he can reform some at home, that'll lessen the administrative state. But that administrative deep state just doesn't really mean anything to my parents because they look at they kept on mentioning this. They look at their stock portfolio and it keeps on going up and up and up and up and up. And so they don't necessarily feel the impact that other people in other classes of society or other generations feel. And it's because the administrative state is keeping them really safe and is coddling them in a way. And Trump threatens that somehow. And Harris mollifies that somehow. Even if you look at the issues, World War and child mutilation, the administrative state needs those two things to forward itself.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of alarming if I was a Trump campaign person, I would be concerned that someone with those concerns still wasn't going to vote for Trump. But I think there's something about Harris, and I say this like fully detesting her and every other Democratic apparatchik that exists, like fully detest them. But there's something very warm and kind of like chill about her. And if there she's very she's terribly inarticulate, but actually Trump is also incredibly inarticulate in a completely different way that is like nails on a chalkboard. I see Harris and I find that she reminds me of my friends, although I don't detest my friends and my friends are smart and all that, but there's a familiarity about her where Trump is like a category of one. So if you're not really paying close attention to news, and certainly the independent media, not the non-corporate media, you will simply not understand the depth of the crisis because you're being presented an alternate reality. And like you're saying, if your pocketbook hasn't been impacted yet, and the war hasn't actually started yet, and the draft hasn't kicked in yet, you're not you're not seeing the same reality that people like you and I and we are. And it's when you start talking about what's actually happening, then you sound like the crazy person. You sound like, because it's so insane. It's so beyond the pale and it's so unprecedented that children are being taken off their parents and put in as wards of the state. And that it just so happens that a lot of states have these terrible child trafficking problems in foster care. Just so happens. And I mean, one thing after another. I mean, it's absolutely nightmarish. So it's a very, very, very hard bubble to puncture. I don't know. I don't know how one goes about that.
Well, I guess it was just really interesting to me to like take a step back from Twitter politics and see my mom's perspective and see her as a ward of the administrative state and a functionary of that and a blessed woman. And how Harris kind of as a model or as an archetype fits in with that. And it's not really about Harris because there's no content to Harris. She totally turns me off. She's asexual, anti-strong man. Like, look who she has toted around like that Waltz guy, and that's going to be happening today or tomorrow. We'll see what happens there. But it's just interesting to finally like kind of get some, oh, okay, that's what you're seeing. That's what you're responding to. And trying to show her like, well, I'm responding to Trump and his essence in this way. I see you see him in this other way, but once I started seeing him in this other way, I can understand the game he's playing. And the game he's playing is to puncture walls and then to build them, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, I think that people like the comfort. It's sort of comforting if you consider yourself in the professional class. That's sort of polished. She's got the nice jewelry. Even though she speaks word salads, she's not swearing. So there's something about the
You're
vulgarity.
not talking about my mom, just to be clear, right?
No. I'm talking about Kamala. Yeah. No, but I mean, I can understand. I mean, I'm from that whole world, and then just that, I don't know if it's the respectability thing, like that just seems so calming to people. They're being decent, and it can be really hard to break that. And I will say, even I'm thinking of my own family members, a lot of people just are fearful of what appears to be chaos or what they perceive as erratic behavior. And I actually find that like understandable. It's, regardless if it was Trump or anybody else, right? Like if you're sort of like, I think I know what I'm getting, even though they might not get what they think they're getting because she won't even tell you what she thinks. But Trump could be, well, we'll see, or maybe tomorrow I'll let you know. There's going to, and you don't know what is going to happen. So I could see again, like people being fearful about that unknown bull in a china shop quality, and they just think they want soothing. It's like they want their ASMR, like something like that.
Oh my God! If Kamala had an ASMR channel and that was her one contribution to the world, it would have like 40 subscribers, and they'd just be ripping her to make fun of her on TikTok.
The funny thing about this campaign, though, is that everyone's always talking about if Trump was elected, if Trump were elected, if Trump was president, if Trump. But I'm like, he's already been president. It's like the media has created this completely, like we've got the VR headset on, in which Trump has never been president, and he came close, like the world will end. But we have precedent. He already didn't start World War III. He already didn't tank the economy. I mean, whatever. I mean, I'm actually even agnostic about his stupid presidency in the first place. And the one thing that I find annoying is when you get into that discussion, then you're just trading your alternate facts. And I find that boring and frustrating, and I don't like to do it. And I would rather kind of pull out. And I need to practice because I'm going back to New York in a couple of days. And, I love my family. I love them. Like you're saying about your mom, wonderful people. But like, God damn, it's hard. It's just like, And so I'll try and take a leaf out of your book, Ben. And I mean, I know I talk to my friends who are still liberals. I talk to them, and they tell me what they think, and I'm like, I know what they're seeing. I see what they're seeing. Oh, this is speaking of my Trump derangement family. This was bought for me by one of my Trump deranged relatives a few years ago.
Is that a vibrator?
It's a pen.
Oh, okay.
That would be one heck of a vibrator. I think that Trump shared I think if Trump had the same views that he holds about illegal immigration, but shared his concerns in a less brash, kind of hostile manner, and stuck to the facts of why massive waves of uncontrolled immigration might have a negative impact on the United States. And if he could speak about that as eloquently as Obama speaks, I think a lot of people would be on board and say, oh, wait, maybe there are some negative impacts of this. Maybe this is something we need to look at. But the clumsy, hostile way in which he does it just creates more support for the idea that he's just against it because he's this horrible, horrible racist. And that's the only reason anybody would be against illegal immigration. And then there go the yard signs with no human being is illegal. And it just pushes the actual real concerns and real effect of it to the side. And then we start arguing about who's nice and who's not. And meanwhile, the issue just continues.
It just seems like he can't not wait, double negative. He can't not flamethrow. I mean, I often wish that too. But do you have to say vermin, really? You know, but I just don't know if they're this idea of him being disciplined is just sort of like not.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, okay, here's the alternative argument to that, because I completely I kind of agree with you. But I mean, millions and millions and millions of people love Trump, and millions of people have voted for him 2 times, and will again in a couple of weeks. So I wonder, and maybe this is wishful thinking, how many people are so alarmed and so kind of spidey senses going, like, what the hell, this is not normal, none of this is normal. Actually, you know what, his flame throwing, his boorishness, actually that's kind of a breath of fresh air, because that's how I feel now. Because if somebody like Obama came along, and I mean, Kamala is Obama 4.0. I mean, she's just, because their idea, their entire concept is so corrupt and no longer fit for purpose. The mask has slipped. They don't have, they're like deep in the bench at this point.
Yeah, what did Walt say? We can't do 4 more years of this. It's like, it's your administration, dude.
Like, they're not sending their best, okay? But even if they were, I feel like Obama just broke a spell where everyone was like, look at this great guy. And then it wasn't great. That, I don't know. I mean, it's time to, like, it's an unanswerable question, I suppose, until the election. Even then, I don't necessarily know if it'll answer the question definitively. His lack of niceness right now is what the biggest thing he has going for him, to me personally, because I'm really sick of nice people. I'm really, really sick of fake, nice, pretend public servants.
Yeah, this piercing the bubble.
Interesting.
I mean, he just pierces the whole thing. Yeah.
I spoke with Brett Weinstein. He's an evolutionary biologist, original founding member of the IDW. And I was working with him for a while, interviewing him about when he was focusing mostly on evolutionary biology. And we did a short episode where he explores the concept of the evolutionary benefit of narcissistic sociopaths. And they're really good if you aim them away from the clan, but they're really bad if they're aimed towards the clan. And that's what I was trying to explain to my mom. Yeah, he's an asshole, but we want him keeping Putin in check, keeping this Israeli thing, like strong man saying, no, we're going to make a deal. You're not going to do that anymore. While America still has the moral authority, he doesn't need to be the nice guy. We don't need that. Now, maybe we want that at home. We want a nice, cuddly Obama guy who's just going to smooth it all over while robbing us blind and giving all the money to the banks and setting up all this more bureaucratic infrastructure wherever you want to put it. Trump, I think, is doing the opposite of that. And that is a threat. I think it's a psychological threat to the people who have benefited so much from the administrative state. And I think that the lockhold that the boomers have, and I love my parents so much, but they're a part of a generation who benefited with tremendous wealth and the tremendous expansion of the managerial state. They are not going to give it up anytime soon. They are still at the top of it and the top beneficiaries of it. And it's going to persist with them at the helm. And I don't think it's proper to go down like the okay boomer or hating on boomers thing. It's a little fun, and we need to diagnose it as a problem, but it's just a generational thing. And I think that might be cause to celebrate or to kind of poke a stick in the ass of Gen X to start stepping up and being the translators from that old way of doing things to this new way of doing things. And we're kind of in between these two ways. And our job as interpreters of history, of transporting the lessons and the life and the beauty of the boomers to the next generation, and then figuring out how to compromise in this way of thinking. It's kind of our job. I don't know how we're going to do it, but it's kind of our job.
I want to speak a little bit about this energy you're talking about that he has. I think Leslie had someone on once that talked about integral theory, which is something that informs me a lot. And in that, there are these sort of stages of development and awareness. And the idea is to actually evolve to be able to embody all of them, not just suddenly become this high, pure, I never touch or hurt anything. And so actually, I think there's been such a disowning of like the strong boundary, the like enough is enough. Sometimes somebody's just got to put their foot down kind of thing. And so I think Trump, they'll call that red energy. That's sort of more the warlord sort of energy. Like there is a manifestation. He's doing it in a more unconscious way. But like if we're not doing it, we don't have leaders who are capable of doing it in a more grounded, centered way. At least someone's taking on that function. So I see him as taking a function that it would be great if other leaders could figure out how to do more skillfully. And he's just doing it. And because like you're saying, like, how do we make sure these other enemies are like not going to mess with us? Right.
Yeah. He flies in the face of anti-bullying education, right? He is 100%. A bully. And so it goes totally against like our niceness, administrative, contained, orderly mode of being. That it maintains society, but it doesn't create new things. And there's some sort of conversation, we don't have to get into it, we're almost done, about the kind of the masculine typical orderliness and the female typical orderliness and trying to figure out how to balance those things because we're way too tipped in the nice, basic bitch kind of.
Oh, yeah.
So.
We're way too tipped in the female energy. I agree with that. But there's one thing when you're talking about that writer, talking about, you described him as Antiwoman, so tongue in cheek, but talking about women's role evolving from outside to outside the home and basically becoming these bureaucratic busybody types. I mean, there's some truth to that, but I find that with conservatives, not you, I'm not saying you, Ben, but like what I find with general conservative takes on when they go down the anti-feminist route, and I am absolutely anti-feminist. I think feminism is absolute BS and it's done harm overall. But I think that both feminists forget this and conservatives forget this, that there's this other female archetype. There's this other female historical figure who is very savvy and quite ruthless, but kind of a power player. Now, so it's not that women, I mean, obviously the feminized bureaucracy exists.
Could you give me, are we talking like Angela Jolie? Wait, can we?
No.
No. Okay, give me a picture of this archetype.
We're talking Catherine the Great. We're talking Golda Meir. We're talking, women who exert huge power and influence behind.
Could you speak in Hollywood just so I can have a visual?
Galadriel.
Melania Trump. Melania Trump. Like her interview when she talked about her husband almost getting assassinated and what that meant, and she's got this poise and this very clipped way of speaking. And I've seen funny stories about her during his administration about how sort of terrifying she was or whatever. How she was sort of very savvy at getting her way in the internal politics of the White House. And you're like, well, of course that exists, because not every woman is a frustrated mom who wants to, break the balls of every man, woman, and child in some, school district. There's this other type. And she is much more interesting, by the way. And she works for good and ill. She is a power player in her own right. So I just, and women have been administrators forever. Like this idea that they didn't used to work outside the home, that annoys me. Like, look at nuns. Nuns have run the freaking Catholic Church for I don't know how many centuries in a way,
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's 100%. He is the bully from the schoolyard, returned to haunt everyone's nightmares. That's why liberals freak out, because it triggers their bad memories from high school. And it's so funny because during the first election in 2015, 2016, my husband, one of his funny takes at like dinner parties is they should never have stopped bullying in schools. They should never have stopped corporal punishment, and they should never have stopped bullying in schools, because now everyone's a goddamn pansy and no one can cope. And, bullying provides some very, very important life lessons that kids absolutely need to learn. And everyone gets shocked. You're like, oh, and, it's all this big laugh. But he was the first person in my circle who said that man is going to win the election. And I was like, there's no way there is no way. And he's like, no, he called Bush low energy Bush or little Ted. He's like, that is your schoolyard taunt. And when he said it was just locker room talk, he's like, that is going to resonate with all the men. And he was right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
One thing that I understood a little bit more about my mom, she's kind of scared of the Christian right, because she has this image in her head of this very dark, controlling patriarchal force, and she has that in her past. So talking to her, like projecting a masculine strength that can break through walls but hold itself in check, that's the problem with Trump. You don't see him. Well, this is the problem, because I think he has that. I think he does have that restraint, but you just don't see it because he's restraining it when he's not using it, right? And if you look, you have to look at like how he makes things happen. Like that would be the argument for him as a person, but to show an image of a man who's a warrior king, it's really hard to see his gentleness. It's really hard to see his constrained strength. It comes through his works, like a building or like a peace deal or something like that. So it's not direct, but all of his pugilism, that's what punches you in the face. All of his abusive male energy, the toxic male energy, is the stuff that you just see, and you don't see the gentle male energy. Just like I think like you're saying, you don't see, Jenny, you don't see Melania Trump's strength because she's so quiet and reserved. Whereas you see Hillary Clinton's strength because she just blathers it out about she's the school marm. She's going to run the whole thing and put the bullies away and make sure that your lunch is tidy. You're going to get everything you need. And you're going to learn your lessons. And I'm going to organize everything. And we're going to take out the bodies in back and turn them into pizza so you don't have to worry about them. Or whatever her long game is.
Careful, Ben.
She brought it up.
Ben is not suicidal.
No. So closing
the deep state
remarks.
turned your power off last time. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Did they? Yeah. Yeah, the deep state. I didn't believe in that thing, but now I'm like, yeah, this is an issue. But it's embedded in how we behave. So it's so embedded in everything we do. Like we can't turn it off.
Process. Mm-hmm.
It's process. It's like this. We get our driver's license. We expect things to arrive on time. Amazon, Costco. It's how we live our life. So just thinking of it as this blob negative thing is wrong. It's like, that's not exact because there's life-giving purpose to that. So figuring out how to manage it and the balance is like probably something that Leslie would say. Do you guys have closing thoughts or hopes, prayers?
Hopes and prayers.
Aspirations, dreams. What's the third one she does? Your dreams, your aspirations. No, Kamala. She's got 3. She always does 3s. Your dreams, your aspirations, your somethings, and then there's opportunity, but that's somewhere else.
Oh my God.
I don't know. I haven't studied her enough.
Oh, it's always the
too much.
boop.
That's too much. That's too. That's like too touchy-feely for me, and I'm a therapist. Stop with that. Stop.
Well, thank you, Benjamin.
Yeah, thank
for
you
being
very
in
much,
the house.
ladies.
Thank you for
I guess
hosting us.
I'll have Leslie or I will go through and put links to all of your works down there in the description. Hope everybody likes and subscribes to Leslie's channel. Leslie's my wife. Give her thoughts and prayers so she can get to her Grecian work. It's not even a vacation. She's going to be working for a company all week. So hopefully she does well. And it's great to tag along with you 3.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good.